attended the ceremony with the keys there. You have to get a special invitation.
Oh yeah?
To attend that. It's the Tower of London. I have a book right here. And that is that they have closed that Tower of London with the guards. They have these beefeater guards there every night since 1190s. I think since William the Conqueror, about 1180. No, after him, I think it was about 1190, 1189. William the Conqueror came there in about 1688, right?
Yeah.
So they're closing that Tower of London ever since with these guards. And you can go there if you get an invitation in this country to go there. You've got to be outside the country. I found out about it.
When were you born at?
1922. 81.
Let me check the sound of this.
I just was looking at a picture here when see, I had an ideal location to teach up there. Took me about 2 minutes to get there.
How long have you lived at this house?
50-some years.
Let's see, let me start the interview. Today's date, June 16, 2003. Your date of birth, you said 1922.
March 25th, 1922.
1922, which makes you 81. You said you're in the Navy?
Right.
U.S. Navy. And highest rank achieved is what?
Radioman, second class.
Dates of service, when did you go in?
42.
And when did you get out?
End of the war, 45.
45. Were you drafted at?
No, I volunteered. Enlisted.
When did you enlist?
Where'd I enlist?
Well, was it after Pearl Harbor, obviously?
Yeah, after Pearl Harbor, yes.
What were you doing when Pearl Harbor came around?
I was playing ping pong in New York City. I just come to New York City because I had to look for work. And I found work on merchant ships, really longshore. And I was going good for about a week and a half when the war started. And so it didn't last too long, and I enlisted.
Where were you born? Where were you raised?
I'm from the coal mining district of southwestern Pennsylvania, in a remote rural setting. I went to a small country schoolhouse of 2 rooms, and then I walked to high school for 3 miles each way. The high school had 8 rooms. We had a graduating class of 50. However, it was a fairly good school. The discipline was quite exact, and I thought our teachers were quite efficient for the time we were in.
So what year did you get out of high school?
1941.
And that
I
was,
failed the first grade. Wasn't really ready for it, so I failed it, and that really helped me along.
You did?
Yes, I believe in you don't pass the grade, you should take it over, whatever subject you
So what brought you to New York?
Well, my mother lived in New York City, and I had my stepfather there. They told me to come down there and get me a job. Otherwise, I would have never come to New York State. I also had an offer to go to California at that time. I had an uncle there that offered me a job. My mother was quite persistent that I come down there, which I did. I didn't have any money to speak of. Money was very hard to come by in coal mining district. However, our transportation at that time on the railroad was very good. I was about 400 miles from New York City, and I could get down there in about 8 hours a day or night. So it really wasn't that bad, except you had to have the fare to go.
What was the fare? Remember?
It was about $7 maybe. Or you could go by Greyhound bus. Or you could go by car if you had to go. I couldn't afford a car. So I went by train once in a while, you know, first few months.
So what made you enlist in the Navy? Why Navy over other branches?
Well, I worked on ships, and I got to meet people, and I thought I'd like to be on a ship. So I enlisted in the Navy in 1942. I didn't wait to be drafted, I enlisted. And I thought they were having a pretty good fight out there in the Pacific, and I was around to get into it at that time. Young guys want to get the enemy.
How old were you?
I was about 19, 20. What was he, 42? I was just about 20. Not quite. Yeah, I was about 20 at that time. About
So,
a year after I got out of high school.
so you said you did, you were in the Pacific quite a bit. And you
Well,
saw,
I went to Great Lake, Illinois, where I got my training. And then they gave us a lot of tests there, and they determined that it'd be better for me to be a radio. I wanted to go into gunnery, but they gave you aptitude tests. And they think, or thought at that time, according to your aptitude test, what field you should go in. So I really wasn't enthused about anything connected with radio at the time. And I then went into radio school, however, when they said that's the best place for me to go at the University of Chicago. And I stayed there about 5 months, 4 months learning, about a month of guard duty, which was a very well operated school. Naval training was very exact. You had to march to class, you had to stand at attention before you sat down. You had to do everything just right. You couldn't speak or talk to anyone in marching. I learned how to swim there, and you learn how to live with people, both in boot camp and in school. From there, it was shipped to California. When I got there, I was very disappointed because I landed in what they called an acorn outfit. An acorn outfit meant aviation, communication, radar, radio, ordnance, then had the other R was probably radio, or I forget, and navigation. What it involved was to get us ready for land invasions. We then were trained by the Marine Corps on the rifle range, bayonet, just like Marines or soldiers, and we practiced a lot of landings off the California coast. And then one day we set sail for the island of New Caledonia, which is a great big French island off the coast of Australia. It took us about 3 weeks to get there, and I know we had to bathe in salt water the whole time. And it was very difficult to stand it because it was like a suit of armor on you. And I did not like New Caledonia because the French people there were very indifferent to us. They really were not welcoming hosts at all. So we had jungle training there, and one day a big troop ship came in called the President Adams, manned by the regular Navy, and we were slated to go into Guadalcanal with the 3rd Marine Division. And they were very well equipped at that time, very fine soldiers. So we got into Guadalcanal, which at that time was pretty well over. Guadalcanal started a couple months before that. As a matter of fact, two boys who grew up with brothers who were killed in Guadalcanal. And in Guadalcanal we got further training, and I got shipped away from the Marines and traded into the New Zealand infantry, because they were going to make the next invasion in Bogainville, which is another island. Well, it wasn't really Bogainville, it was right off it, called Treasury Mono. It consisted of 2 small islands, and put us in the northern part of any land forces at that time. So our contingent then went on LSTs with the New Zealand Infantry Division. There was about a half a division, it wasn't really a real division. And put on a big attack on those islands that I was with. They handled themselves very well, and I got to meet a lot of good friends there. And they got about 5.5 Japs to 1 till they secured it. Well, we established a radio base, and then they took the jungle. There was a great big rainforest, and our Seabees come in. They took the rainforest down, and in a few weeks they had an enormous airfield there. The airfield was so large it could take 2 bombers at a time. The object of all of this was to knock out the big bases in Rabaul. Rabaul is, well, it's in New Britain, and New Britain's right off New Guinea. So to give you an idea, they were very powerful. The Japanese were very powerful there.
So what's the name of the place where the Seabees built the base you were just talking about?
Treasury Island.
Okay.
There was Treasury and Mono. Mono was the large one, but it was mountainous. So we left there and went over to Treasury, which was flat. Not a very large island, probably about 3.5 miles long and maybe 1.5 miles to a mile wide, but enough for what we wanted. We were under constant aerial attack for quite a while. The Japanese at that time were very powerful, and
They had Rabaul at that time, right?
oh yeah, they had 7 big air bases in Rabaul, and they even controlled Bogainville. Now Bogainville was just north of us, about 20 miles north of us, which was invaded by the Marine Division about, well, maybe a week or 2 later. And they only took a small part of Bougainville, about 12 square miles. I think they went in about 12 miles and then down. The island is about, I would say about 90 or 100 miles long, maybe about 40 miles wide, of rugged rainforest. Very mountainous, volcano. This is a very rough country out there. The natives there were third world. The natives we met were friendly, but they were Melanesians, black people, but very fine-looking people. And they loved us. We traded with them. They got along very well with us. But only men could trade because women were owned by the men. And boys and men would come down. They were very good at dickering. One day a friend and I bought a outrigger canoe from one of them so we could go out in the bay and things got better. But we stayed there from, I think it was October till the following early summer. And things got better, and we fell behind the lines. Things got too tame there, we got too built up. And one day a ship came in called the USS Witter. And some of our men were being transferred, and the captain that day told a buddy and me that both of us are going to go. One of them is going to go. One of us will go to New Guinea to practice what we were doing in the Solomons, and the other one will go aboard the ship. So I wanted to go aboard the ship. I wanted to get some sea action. I had enough of this jungle. He wanted it too. So he gave us a game, and I beat him out on it, and I got aboard the ship. 6 weeks later, I got a letter from him with 2 pictures, and he had a beautiful time on the beach in Australia. That night his orders were changed, and he went to Australia instead. He had 2 girls by him and a nice big bottle of beer. So I kicked my own hind end. I was always volunteered. This time I volunteered myself. And ship duty was a lot harder than I anticipated. On a ship, if, well, you had 4 on and 8 off as a rule. But that only lasted part of the time. Every morning at sunup you had an hour duty of general quarters, which is ready for action. Same thing in the evening. That's the most 2 dangerous times to be aboard a ship because of the cast of your silhouette out in the water. You're most apt to be attacked at that time.
You can be spotted easier?
Yeah, you both can spot. However, I was on a ship that was very deadly for U-boats. Destroyer escort had wonderful gear on it for that time. Had a crew, I believe, of about 270. Not a big ship, thinly armored. We had 26 guns on there.
What was the name of the ship again?
Witter.
Wittery?
W-I-T-T-E-R. It was named for the Dean Witter family. Ensign Witter was killed in the very early part of the war. And 6 ships, including ours, were built at the Bethlehem shipyards in San Francisco. And they came out. They were later called Cord 40. They included the Witter, the Wilmarth, the Whitehurst, the Bowers, the England. I think that's about it. And those are ships, ships of that division. Our ship was a Witter. Now we would seldom meet the others. We would probably get together in an action, like an invasion. But other times we could be spread anywhere. So we didn't always see them. In that division we had 1 doctor who transferred from one ship to the other, different intervals. And we had a Commodore whose name was Fearless Freddy. A very unique character who many people thought was psychologically off. He loved battle. He extremely loved battle, and he expected you to be that way too. He wanted you to be a red-blooded American. He loved battle more than any man I ever met.
Sounds like General Patton?
Yeah, I would rank him with General Custer or Patton or someone, but he wasn't afraid of the devil. He won a big medal in the beginning of the war on the Lexington. And I think he was aboard every one of our ships when they were hitting Okinawa. And he'd just pull one in, go on the other one. They said he jinxed everything, but he loved fighting. So then I was aboard the ship, as I say, and 4 on, 8 off didn't last too long, because often when we would go into the deep waters where enemies were, sometimes we'd go in 1,000, up to 2,000 miles into enemy waters, you would be on and 4 off. Now in that 4 off, you relieve your buddy for meals, we call that chow, general quarters, anything at all, so you weren't off at all. Now if they put stores aboard, with your provision or ammunition, all hands had to show forth. So if you pulled into a place at midnight, you had to get out of bed and help load these groceries, bullets, and whatever you had. It was a lot of work. You could not backslide on anything. You really had big responsibility. And therefore I found it harder really than being on land. It was very difficult to get sunlight or anything. You could not expose yourself to the sun unless you were given permission. Like they might say, anyone off duty can have an hour in the sunlight, although the tropics have very severe sun. But I had such a suntan from being on land that I didn't really lose it until 1949. I had a good suntan. And I think it's affected my skin a little today. And then where do you want to go from there?
Well, what happened then? You know, you're out at sea, and you ever see any action with the Japanese when you're on that boat?
Yeah, we had 3 big battles in addition to the ones I had on land. I told you it was in a big one land. Where we had a lot of land casualties. That was a terrible fight too, but the New Zealanders pretty well took care of them, but we had quite a fight there. But see, I think the first thing we did after working around Bogainville and Green Island Emerald, we got a call one day to rescue a downed Marine plane. A plane of ours bombed truck. Now truck was in the Caroline Islands, and in truck they had one of their great bases, and our Marine plane went up there and it bombed it. Was hit by anti-aircraft fire and fell at sea. And our mission was to go and rescue them, and we were about 1,500 miles away. So we went up in that region and we made a search. Would go a couple square miles in each direction, in a box-like direction. And we had no results after 3 days because we got another call that there was a big wind, and a plane saw about 200 miles to the west. So we steamed in that direction, and again we could not find them. And about the fourth day we were told to leave them, but our captain was a very fine gentleman, and he said he could not do that. We'll cut our power to conserve fuel, and we'll keep looking. On the fifth day at night we had a submarine scare, we thought. And so we started to fire charges, and it made I guess it made a great big flame at night. And way out in the distance, we noticed the flare. So we headed out that way, and we found these Marines. 2 of them had been killed. I believe there were 5 of them, but their faces were about 3 times normal. And they were all in the water except the officer who was alive. He was injured. And these guys were struggling with sharks and that, they tell me. One of them had my bed later. See, that's the thing on the ship. You give up your bed if you're near where the pharmacist is. There's no doctor aboard them. So we put them aboard, and they were very happy people. And we were happy too. They told us they would never criticize the Navy. So we brought them back. It took about 3-4 days to bring them back.
You said their faces were larger or swollen?
Yeah, you see sun and water in the equatorial region. They were almost on the equator.
Wow.
I would say I crossed the equator 60 times, being on the winter. Then we took part in the New Guinea operations. In New Guinea, like everywhere else in the war, you had the hop, skip, and jump philosophy. And that meant you'd take one island maybe out of 10, neutralize the rest through air and sea. And in New Guinea we just hopped along the coast. Now New Guinea's a very large, mysterious, beautiful island. I've been all over the coast. And it would be about from here to Denver, Colorado.
That big?
Extremely big. And it includes great big mountains. You can even see them from the shore. And rainforests, enormous rainforests, tremendous amount of rain. The rain we've had here is nothing. You can get a few feet in the ground in no time. Just the whole thing. I know when I lived in the tents in the island, we were always wet. Extremely wet. Well, they also have large meadows, and they have big rivers, and all kind of natives. And some of them are very black, some of them are different. Like in Bogainville, are very black in looks, but they're not the same as our Negroes. They're the oceanic Negroes, called Melanesian. So we took part in some of those operations, and then I came back to my home base for a visit for the last time in Treasury. And from there we worked up to New Guinea. We got to the Admiralty Islands and then over to Hollandia in the west. And from Hollandia, we worked that whole region there. We did a lot of convoy duty, and one day, after a long period of time, we were to go to Australia. But that night, being on the radio, I found out our orders were changed. I think our captain got drunk and insulted the big guy on the shore that night. So we were ordered to go to Australia, and the guys were all cleaning their gear that day to go to Australia. I'm going to go there. I said, you're not going anywhere. Well, we'll go to Hawaii. I said, you're not getting in there either. So we had to make this long journey, 5,500 miles to Hawaii, convoying. And when we got about 100 miles from Hawaii, we were relieved of our duties. And we headed to the Marshall Islands, to the island of Majuro. Today they call it Majuro. And we come into this atoll there, which was one of the most beautiful places I ever saw. The interior was green, and the outside was like a large ring, never too wide, no more than about a half mile wide, even at some places a few yards, or 100 yards. And our captain now felt sorry for us, and he told us, well, you guys can have 2 beers, half of you can go ashore. I always operated under the philosophy that the quicker you get a leave, the faster you, better off you are, because you know you'll get it. I said, no, I want to go ashore. We went over there and we had 90-day wonder. 90-day wonder was an officer who became an officer in that he had gone to college. And that impressed me too, because usually they knew less than we did. So we went ashore and we worked him over to get 2 more beers for us, rounded him up, which he did. Now we had 4 beers. Now some fellows didn't drink and they sold their beers to other guys. We had a baseball game. Pretty soon we had a big fist fight. And we had to be carried aboard the ship with nets. Some of us, the captain got mad. That ended all leaves from thereafter. So those guys who didn't get theirs the day before didn't get anything. You're not allowed to drink beer on the ship, at least you weren't then. So I was pretty happy to get that. And we relieved another ship. Being on the radio, they will tell you at a certain day, maybe 2 in the morning at 2:13 at a certain longitude, latitude, and minute, you will meet a ship in a certain position. And you will escort that one back to New Guinea, which we did. As soon as you get into New Guinea, we were ordered out again to make the trip all over again. That was our punishment. We had to do that 2-3 times. Then we were given a trip to Guam.
You had to go from New Guinea back towards Hawaii again?
Oh yes, that took about 3 weeks.
And then back up?
11,000 miles.
Round trip?
Yeah.
My God.
11,000. You see, the Pacific Ocean is so large that it encompasses about 1/3 of the surface of the Earth. It is an enormous ocean. I think the Pacific would have more water than all the land combined in the world. It's really big. I know my first trip was 6,500 miles from California to New Caledonia.
Wow.
And we went there unescorted with over 3,000 troops.
Wow. That's pretty dangerous, isn't it?
Well, as a matter of fact, I was on the radio one day in the Naval base, and I got a message that the ship I come over on had taken the Seabees further north, and as soon as it unloaded them, it was torpedoed. The loss of, I think it was 27 men. They only made that one trip. Its former territory was New York to Africa, a Robin liner, but a beautiful ship. And I was sorry to hear that it went down. But it did go down, and many of them went down that I worked on as a longshoreman in New York. I think the Grace Line lost 14 merchant ships in Italy and the South Pacific, and one off South America. So you see, they did lose a lot of ships. And then we made another trip to Saipan. I got off there, and the captain was a good guy, because I had a brother there in the NACAP gun crew, and I asked if I could visit the Army anti-aircraft where he was. He said, yeah, take the night off, which I did. He's a good fellow. And I went up there with the soldiers for a night with my brother. And then we left there, and in 1944, in October, we made a lot of fleet exercises, and we invaded Leyte in the Philippine Islands. We took in a bunch of soldiers there, and I witnessed the battle both on the land there and later on the sea, because the Japanese closed in on us. And Admiral Oldendorf there, the 7th Fleet, crossed the T on and sank the whole fleet. But the big part we played in that was that just prior to that, our division had gone to Palau, and we picked up several ships filled with ammunition and several with fuel oil. And we were under great attack coming in and out, aerial attack. We got through and brought them to the fleet, and they unloaded them in great haste to get ready for the Japanese Navy, which we used against them when they invaded there. They had to come up what was called Saragallo Strait, which was a strait between Samar and Leyte. But every ship coming in that division, in that area, was sank.
Every Japanese ship.
That didn't occur in other places. The Japanese Navy never attacked one spot. One of them came through the center, and Admiral Halsey had left that area, exposed our DEs and light carriers, which were providing a force for Leyte, and almost upset the whole invasion. I wasn't really knowledgeable about that until much later. He had gone further north. He was a guy that was protecting them. And he was after the Japanese carriers, which had no planes on them, because they provided a bait for him to do that very thing. Japanese are not dumb people. Not only are they clever, but they were very brave and fanatical. Every island we invaded had very few prisoners to be taken, and they fought right to the last man. They were not any person to give up with. If they would have had our resources, it might have been a different story. But anyhow, we participated in that, and then we left that area there because we were needed elsewhere. And before the rest of the Philippines were invaded, we went back down to New Guinea. We got ourselves ready there, and then we set sail for Ulithi. Ulithi was known as Shangri-La. It was in the Carolines. Caroline Islands be about as large as the United States. But if you put it all together, all of the land area together, you get about the size of Rhode Island. Very small, but a very large area. But in Ulithi, we had an anchorage. It looked like a large ring. And we had a net to cross where we'd go in. And we had our fleet in there for this invasion of Okinawa. And I knew what was taking place right along because I was on the radio.
So Ulithi was like a staging ground?
Yeah. But the ships that come in there were unloading the other ships right from the water. They couldn't even put it on land. There was very little staging area for land, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And one night, 2 suicide planes come in, unannounced. I don't know, the Japanese fixed them in some nearby island because we'd neutralized them all. They hit this one carrier where they were watching the movies, and they did an awful job. Killed several hundred.
Really?
And the ship had to quit, had to go back to Pearl Harbor or somewhere.
What carrier was that?
I forget right now, but it was a big one. And the other airplane come down, and he saw an island right beside us. He thought it was a super dreadnought. He smashed into that. That was the end of it. Well, anyhow, we then set for Okinawa in March 45. See, things happen quickly. We had the Japanese on the run. We were hitting them right. The Philippines were still going on when we hit Okinawa. There were troops in Luzon still in battle. So we staged, got ready there in Ulithi, and we went into Okinawa, which was about over 2,000 miles away, I would say. Oh, probably, maybe more. We were in enemy territory, maybe at 2,000 miles.
How long would it take?
Japs.
How long would it take to cross that distance?
As I remember, it must have taken 5 days. taken off, maybe 6, I don't know. But we had a force that I thought would go right to Japan. It was 60 miles long, protected with submarines, DEs like ours for Japanese U-boats. They spotted us. We knew it. We could see them. They're here. Point them out in our radar. But they didn't dare attack. We shot a few down even on the perimeter, knocked off a few subs. So I thought, boy, we're going to take Japan on now. This will be the end. But when we got up there, it was on my birthday, on March 25th. Big bombardment. Okinawa was protected by the Japs for 50 years before we came. And they had 7 huge airfields there at that time. So we bombarded that day and created quite a few fires, I think oil tanks and that. And then we'd leave it at night and come in early in the morning. One morning when we come in, they were taken off in the airstrips. And we gave them all the anti-aircraft fire we could. We got a few, not only our ship, but the others. And we were the escort ship for the Indianapolis. You might have heard of it.
Yeah. Carried the bomb, right?
As a matter of fact, we would go in like a beagle dog close to the shore, and if a shell was fired, they'd fire a big one in. Our heaviest gun was only 3-inch. That's about as heavy a shell as you can carry, but it's nothing compared to what naval shells are. The Indianapolis had 8-inch. You couldn't handle an 8-inch shell yourself. So the Indianapolis was with us, and we were with the Bowers, and 2 of them got off. 2 of the Japanese suicide planes aimed for the Bower and us. They were concentrating on on escort ships, and one came for the Bowers. He came in a straight dive, and just before he hit, the Bowers made a quick turn, just a part of wing hill. And when ours went up, our ship did not fire quickly enough. And Indianapolis did. And aboard the Indianapolis was Admiral Spruance, who was commander of the 5th Fleet. And he gave our captain heck. So he got it for us that day. But we had gotten other aircraft ourselves in the Philippines. We were under big attacks. But now that happened. So we were a little more careful, and on Easter Sunday, that would have been April 1st, 1945, I remember, the big invasion started. And it wasn't too bad from what I would have expected, because the troops and Marines cut straight across the island. But now, pretty soon, we found ourselves all alone. We were assigned to what was called Roger Picket duty. We had to protect the island against Japanese coming in to attack our troops. And the attacks started getting worse and worse by kamikazes. One of my friends told me that battle's not so bad. You'd only come ashore 2 months before, on the ship 2 months ahead. Just come from the States. I said, yeah, that's true, Tom. You're the target. We're going to be the target one of these days. And on April the 6th, we were under great attack all day, and our ship had to have oil on it, and finally got it on. I thought we had lunch about 4 o'clock, and right after that we had a big attack. 2 of them came out of the skies. We fired like mad and got the first one. And the other one was coming straight for us, and we had him on fire, but he missed just where I was and hit right below me and hit into the engine room, fire room, and kitchen. He blew out about half of the ship. A 1,000-pound bomb in the plane. Well, luckily he missed where I was, because on all the other 5 ships, all radiomen, with the exception of a few, were dead, unless they were on guns. They aimed for the bridge because I was a communication part of the ship. And they wanted to exterminate or get rid of all the DEs and destroyers so that they could come in and torpedo everything else. It was a good idea, but it didn't work out.
With their submarines?
Yeah, they were submarines. So
now, were they flying off the island? There weren't any Japanese
No,
carriers?
they were coming from Japan.
Oh, they were?
Yeah. Okinawa was like Key West is here. It might be 200 or less from Japan.
Oh, yeah.
Very close to Japan.
Wow.
I mean, you're getting up in that area there. So we were hit heavily, and I saw quite a bit of action that day. One or two suicide planes were right through the noses of our ships, and several were shot down. When the ship was hit, I helped the gunners out all I could, but we weren't under such heavy attack right then because we weren't we weren't a target right then. One of our sister ships came up and towed us in to a little anchorage called Kermaretta. Kermaretta was not really controlled by us, except we used it for our ships. If the Japanese would show up, we would fire at them. So we had the bait. And we went into Kermaretta, and if we were under attack there, the Navy would put in smoke and use PT boats and make a big smoke journey.
Yeah.
Put in white smoke. You couldn't see anything, so they couldn't see us. But some of the ships would open up on them right through the smoke. Our radar was so good, it'd shoot them right down. As a matter of fact, the radar in our ship was so efficient that we could spot a plane 300 miles away at that time.
Wow.
And we just traced them. If they come in within 20 miles, we were all ready. That was a very good thing for that. We had good radar. The enemy also had radar, but I don't know if they were advanced as we are or not. I know the Germans had radar and the British did. We had pretty good radar, but I thought we did, which I believe we got from Britain originally. So we were in there, and there were so many ships hit that we could not get a guy to weld it to take us back to the United States. And this kept up from April 6 till about June, almost, 45. And then my lieutenant came up to me one day and he said, "We're going to take the casualties back." Somewhere in the hospital anyhow. "We're going to take the casualties back to the United States on the troop ship Hawking Bay, big ship. And you can go with them because you were here the longest. And when you get to California, you will take a leave, and then you will come back to California, and our ship will be ready, and you'll take it through the Panama Canal with the guys who are not from the west part of the country, western part." So I went back on the Hawking Bay. We were under great attack getting out, big convoy, and we brought back a lot of the amputees to Tinian. We had a big hospital there. Many of the men had legs off, arms off, maybe even all arms and legs off. Pitiful sight. We got down there and we put aboard the Seabees. I think we went to Kwajalein, then we went to Hawaii. So now I got to see Hawaii. But we didn't get in there. We got off on a little base there, and they gave the destroyer escort and 2 beers every day. That's all I needed. I was drunk on 2 beers. I could hardly. I didn't know. I was land sick. I mean, instead of being seasick, I was land sick. I was aboard the ship too long. I thought the land should hit me in the teeth. Then we came to San Francisco, and I had no uniform because I had ascended back when I was with the Jungle Group, ascended to my uncle in California. And I had a hard time getting out. It got so bad that I asked to see a chaplain. And he wanted to know what I wanted. I said, "I would like to go back to war. I'd rather not have a liberty because in war every guy's the same. Over here I can't get out of this place. Every day I try to get a uniform. It's line too long. I get ready, if white socks on or black, I'm never going to get out." So I did finally get a uniform on his behalf, I guess. And came across the country and had to leave, which I had to pay for, by the way. And when I come back, I found out the ship had beat me, so they had to send it back to country, send us back again across the country. And right about that time, World War II ended. And on September 28th, 1945, I had enough points. I was in Philadelphia where the ship come in. I asked to get out. I get out. October the 1st, I was in college.
Wow.
I wasted no time. 1 weekend.
Wow. So what did you think about the atomic bomb?
Best thing that ever happened to us. If it wouldn't have been the atomic bomb, I think we would have had a catastrophic amount of men killed and probably the elimination of the Japanese nation as a whole. It would have been a terrible thing to contemplate. I think we did a great deal in helping us save 1 million or 2 men as well as them. I believe Harry Truman was a wonderful president in that regard. Did a great favor to us. But I do not understand why we had to wait so long to figure things out. We shouldn't have gone into Okinawa if we knew we had the atomic bomb, because in Okinawa we had 50,000 casualties. And our whole division was hit, as I told you. I believe it was 250 ships were hit.
Wow.
The day we got hit, 26 got hit, 6 were sent to the bottom. I believe the Japanese had over 500 aircraft against us, suicide aircraft.
Wow.
And that it would be like a partridge trying to fly into. It was really a scary thing. It wasn't really anything anyone would like to happen to them. It was really scary. Although you weren't thinking of it at the time, it was a scary thing. These people give up their lives like that.
Do you remember when FDR died?
Yeah,
you were right out there.
He died when we were in Okinawa. And we all took the news quite badly. We all seemed to like President Roosevelt. He was the only president we knew.
Right.
For 13 years there, and I was only 22 or 3. I do remember Herbert Hoover, and I think when I was a very young boy, a little bit about Harding. Coolidge, excuse me. And maybe Harding too, but especially Coolidge, a little bit about Hoover. When I was a boy, we had the Great Depression and the Prohibition, in which things were very rough.
Mm-hmm.
So I do remember that. Most people then spoke of World War I.
Right.
My father and his brother and my 2 other uncles were in the war. They had gone to France. Many of the other people there, and they all spoke of the Western Front in World War I. And my great-grandfather was in the Civil War. But I didn't ever meet him. But at that time, when I was a boy, they still had Civil War veterans who were left. I have a book from my hometown that shows them marching, and then they went by wagon about 100 years ago. And then finally a few of them were in a truck or a car, and then there were none left. They got too old to go. Now, another sequel to all this is that I just started in on the computer not too long ago. And one night or day when it was over in Hawaii, I go there in the winter, I put down Witter on my search engine, and I got a response from a guy called Wilmarth. Wilmarth was the fellow whose grandfather's brother was the person whom they named the Wilmar ship for, our sister ship. Remember I said Wilmar. And he was in the Marine Corps for 6 years, serving in Okinawa, and he's extremely interested in what happened there. And he sent me CDs of that area. And he sent me CDs of Bethlehem Shipyard, where our ship was. He sent me a CD of our ship and its hull, and the other ship that was with us, the Rodman. The Rodman was a destroyer, and the Rodman had a bomb right through the kitchen, which was oh, tall as this whole room, 6, 8 feet higher, or 1,000-pounder, never went off.
Wow.
That sometimes happens. For example, during the Battle of the Philippines, as I told you, we had our 6 ships, but we brought a lot of others with it, and the chief of that was a captain on a tanker. And one night, against all good policy, he was using the blinker. You know what a blinker is?
Send message.
Shoot the light. Japanese airplane come over, big rock, threw a torpedo, went right under our ship into that tanker, and luckily it didn't go off. Our ship luckily shot him down. 3 Japanese at very close range.
Wow.
So that can easily happen, but that would be the way that was. Now this Wilmarth writes to me quite often. Then another fellow wrote, and his name is Max Crow from El Paso, Texas. He served on the Whitehurst, which was another sister ship of ours, except he served in the 60s, as Wilmarth did.
Oh.
But they got me in contact with an old shipmate, and I called him up. And he and I had a great big chat, and he told me they had 14 conventions. And I said to him, why didn't you call me? He said, I couldn't find you because you changed your addresses so often, and you got rid of your insurance, your GI Bill insurance. And he said, this year we're going to have another one. I said, where's that going to be? Albany. I said, how far is that? I said, well, I can almost spit down there. So I'm looking forward to the 15th. But I assume from what the fellow in Minneapolis told me that probably over half are going.
Wow. So how many would you expect to see there?
I would be surprised if I saw 20 or 30, maybe even couples of them. But I was really shocked when I could get the captain. I got his email and wrote him a letter.
Oh, yeah?
And I wanted to write an email to the son of the man I mentioned who just came aboard the ship and wondered about battle. His name was Benjamin Zack. So I got his email, and just as I was writing it, he called me on the phone. And he wanted, this was last week, he wanted to know why I was after him, and I told him how his father always spoke of him and his mother, how he loved them, and I said I wanted to find out where you lived. I knew you came from New Jersey, but I did not know quite where I would have come to visit you, because I, for 58 years, have been wondering about you, in case you wondered. He said that he was a dentist who's now retired. He has a daughter, and he wrote a nice tribute to his father. But he, unfortunately, will not come to the convention this year, so I'm disappointed to hear that. But on one of the trips in Albany, we're going to be in the Comfort Hotel, we're going to visit the Slater, which is tied up in Albany. That'd be a replica of our ship.
Oh, yeah?
If I would have been at that convention, I would have tried to bring him to Glens Falls, take him up Lake George, Whitehall, birthplace of the Navy, Saratoga. Of course, Albany has a lot to offer, but I think we even have more interest here.
Sure.
So that would be about the story. Is there any question?
Yeah, your pictures. I'd like to see some of your pictures.
I don't have many. None from the ship. First of all, you could not take pictures. We had a few. These are some of my mates in the Solomons.
Are you in it?
I don't know if I'm in that one or not. Yeah, I'm right there.
Which one?
That one.
T-shirt? White T-shirt?
Yeah. See, here I am in the tent, and we're down in the rain.
Oh, cute. Which one's you?
This one. That's how we had to be dressed.
Because of the rain coming down, huh?
Oh, yeah. We had tents put up, Seabees put them up. All our floors were solid mahogany. All of our trees were huge mahogany or teak. our crap houses were made out of mahogany. And then to make things worse, the Navy sent us a shipload of lumber out there, which we did not want. We wanted beer. There we are again.
That's mahogany wood?
Yeah. All of that enormous trees there. When they fell down, they'd be higher than you are.
Wow.
I bet you they're all sawed off today.
You in this one too? Which one?
Yeah. This one. You could really get sick there. About a third of the men got malaria.
Did they?
Oh, yes.
How do you get over malaria?
You don't. You undergo a great amount of chill and fever. Now here's one of my New Zealand buddies. Here's one of my New Zealand buddies. He died. And this one and his wife died. After 43 years, I went down to New Zealand to visit these people.
Really?
And now they're all gone. My wife and I went down 1985 on the tour, and we also went on our own. And we had a marvelous time with them. Country in New Zealand.
Look at it. Put these, just take a snapshot of them over here.
I don't know how good they'll come out.
Oh, it's a little dark over there.
I'm sorry, don't have anything. I have some pictures of the ship and the damage, but they are on the CD. Have to put them on the camera. Are you on computer?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'll let you borrow them if you want to look at them, but it's up to you. No, you weren't allowed to take pictures.
No, imagine you weren't.
All of our mail, by the way, was censored.
Now, let me ask you this question.
Here's another one. Right here. There's a New Zealand soldier. They were called Kiwis.
Kiwis.
Right there. Some guy had a camera there, which he shouldn't have had. That's about the tents again. I don't know if they're anymore here or not.
Who's that? Is that you?
No, it's a relative. He was in the army forever. This fellow here died too. He was a New Zealander. His daughter came to see us about 4 times, and she's coming again next month, I think.
Oh, yeah?
And he died at 60 down there in Auckland. Here was my brother in the Hawaii. That's where I go at that time.
That's your brother, huh?
Yeah, he was in the army.
And is your brother still alive?
Yep.
Where's he live?
Pennsylvania. Here's a picture of New Zealand right here. And this is the father of that girl. Very nice man.
Uh-huh.
This is from boot camp, a few of my buddies. But you know, I haven't, my good buddies from the ship, dead. My real other good buddy, real fine friend, got a letter about 15 years ago. He's deceased.
Oh, really?
Wanted to go down to see him. Many of them are gone, I think, by now. Don't forget, some would be up to 90 years of age.
Yeah.
If you weren't born before 1925, I don't know how you could be a war veteran.
Before. Yeah.
Because that is 70.
Right.
You'd have to be about 78. We had a few fellows on our ship that went into the Navy at 15 from the hillbilly region.
Right.
Didn't wear shoes and that. Found a home.
Right.
I would have stayed in myself. I didn't have free college. I loved it.
Free college. GI Bill?
That's why I went. I got free college. Went 5 years free. And we paid it back. It's a great thing. The government treated us all right. I was extremely lucky and never got hurt.
So, when you got out of college, did you go to school to be a teacher?
Well, at first I was going to be a lawyer, then changed my mind.
That's what I did too.
Yeah.
I didn't like it.
I found out that I didn't know anything much about a college. I'd gone to University of Chicago, and I went to University of Pittsburgh for a summer prior to that. But I didn't know how hard that college was where I went. It was in New York City, and I had been out of high school for about 4 or 5 years, and worked on the docks, and I was in the Navy, and I go to New York University in the Bronx. See, they have several divisions. And I found that I was falling behind. I know one day I spent about 3-4 days on an essay. I had to write about 500-word essay for English. One boy come in, he just wrote it out, he had an A, and I had a C. I said, how do you do this? Oh, he said, I go to Brooklyn Tech. I said, Brooklyn Tech, tell me about it. Well, he said, you take a scholarship in New York City to enter this high school. And when you come out of there, your math and everything else advances you to about the second year of college. And then I found out most of them are going to be doctors or something. I said, boy, I'm going to a school where I'm just outclassed. It was something. Some of them got bounced, some of those veterans. But we really worked hard. I really had to start working. I put everything aside and I studied every day till about 1, 2 in the morning, even weekends, till I could catch up. No assignment. I asked the history professor, where are we, professor? Oh, I don't know, somewhere around 350 or something. Well, how much should read a night? Oh, about 85 pages. That was the other book. He's already through that book. And I remember my first history test was to explain the political, economic, social, I guess, implications of the Byzantine Empire from the 4th to the 15th centuries. And he gave 2 tests, one like that, A and B, and the board. I said, where's the test? Right there. That little book would fill it up. I hadn't even heard of the Byzantine Empire. So you see, you get a big joke when you go to a place like that. And I know I took German, analytical geometry, which is an extremely difficult course. It's beyond trigonometry. Chemistry, which is very hard. German, I was medieval German, and English, and speech. It was very difficult, very difficult. I really should have gone to a place like Plattsburgh.
Teachers College.
Not that Plattsburgh's bad, but that NYU where I went was so hard that when I went to teachers college, I found it far more relaxing.
Seemed like a vacation.
Yeah, in NYU. I continued to work in the docks at times on weekends if I could. And I enjoyed working on the docks. They paid you a tremendously good salary. The last year I was there when I was in student teaching, I earned more on the side than I did teaching. And we come in and got $2,900 here for an MA. I got $3,000, but they took it away in 3 years. So you get an idea how teaching is today compared to then. However, the students were more purposeful, families were more complete, And if you didn't want to be in school, really, you didn't have to be.
So what brought you up to Hudson Falls? When did you get here?
1951. I wanted to go back to Pennsylvania because I figured I didn't want to be in New York City. And I went back to NYU one day, and they said they have a position in Hudson Falls, and I never heard of the place. I know I had a Glens Falls fire insurance company, and my wife and I wondered where that place was. Never heard of it. So I called up a fellow named Mr. King. Did you ever hear of him?
Dana King?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You knew him?
Well, I didn't know him. He was before my time.
Yeah, well, in 1951, I get down to the railroad station. He told me to send in my credentials.
He was the superintendent.
So I got onto the train. Well, I didn't know. I thought it cost me about $5. It cost me over $15, which almost floored me. I couldn't believe that it was far away. I thought Hudson Falls would be up somewhere above Westchester. Maybe a 2-hour run from New York. When they told me where it was, I almost was not going to go. Because I could have gone back to where I came from, Pennsylvania. My cousin had a big influence on the school board, told me I could get on and meet people. So I come up here and I met him. The first question he asked me was if I used alcohol. I told him, you know, sometimes I have a little drink. He didn't like that. He told me that alcohol never touched his lips after a while. I told him, do you smoke? No, don't smoke. Go to church? Yes. He was very particular about your character. And he was hard to understand. I thought he belonged in the past somewhere. But as time went on, I got to like the man more and more. He's very honest. He didn't say much, but he was a good, honest person. And I really genuinely liked him. It took a while. I think after 15 years he started calling me Al. It took about that long. So you really had to be careful at that time how you acted. Every teacher wore a suit and tie. And as in New York, where I did my student teaching, I required every student to stand up in a dress.
Oh, you were down here on Main Street, weren't you? High school? Or
First I went in the old junior high.
where was that?
It's where the Margaret Murphy School is today. And that school was built in 1868. And when he first showed it to me, I couldn't believe it. I asked him, I said, is this a fire hall or what? It had walls about that thick. And he showed me where I'd teach. The floors, floors were oiled. You were up in a pedestal. And another room beside it had swinging doors so that the class coming into her room would pass through my room. But all the desks were fastened to the floor. I thought, well, you know, this is different. This would be a great place to teach. And you know, we never had an upset room. We were never cold. We were never warm. It was ideal. And I believe in that old system yet. I sort of missed it when we come up here. All the kids crawl around in chairs, push them around, have dirty seats. That didn't happen. So there are a lot of things in the old style that were not that bad.
Yeah, I mean, you must have seen quite a bit of change between when you started and when you left.
Very big change. And the kids here were very nice. Parents were very supportive. But throughout the years, it was a great place to live. We didn't leave here. Raised our family here, and I think had a good situation living very near the school. That isn't to say there weren't some burrs here or there, you know.
Right.
I know it's much more difficult today with the way the situation in the world is, from what I hear.
It's different. It's different.
In a way, it's harder, much harder. There's a lot more bureaucracy. You're not taping me.
Huh?
Taping me?
Yeah.
Much more bureaucracy than it used to be. As I mentioned to you before, I think I can eliminate all the problems we have quickly. If you don't make the first grade in English and math, you must repeat it until you catch up.
Yeah.
Any grade you don't make, you should fail. You should never be passed ahead. Now I know that they have it where, well, you're a first grader and you're 17 and here's a 6-year-old. Well, we'll put the 17-year-olds with the other 17-year-olds who failed. But the teacher should have more discretion in the classroom. And if a student doesn't want to learn, he should not be forced to be in there after, say, about the 8th grade. And if he can't behave in any grade, there should be a reckoning made as to how he's going to be accommodated so that he doesn't become a detriment to the rest of the boys and girls.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, all of this farce is, I don't believe it. They have all this bureaucracy, liberalism.
Well, I think I'm from the old school, though.
Well, yes, we had to learn when we went to school. No one really made me go to school. My grandmother was illiterate.
Yeah.
My uncles were illiterate. They raised me, but I had cousins who were doctors and engineers, teachers. And I went to the service and I saw how much education meant. And I saw the 90-day wonders, as I mentioned to you, if you went through college. And that's really the main reason why I wanted to make my life better. I did.
Well, you saw it when you were at the right age, I guess.
Yeah, I've seen quite a bit like that. Now I've been retired for 21 years and enjoy it tremendously. So.
Well, you get around quite a bit.
I get around, and thank goodness I'm still able to get around.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing.
Well, you're still sharp as a tack. I
Well,
have one more question for you, though.
Yeah.
When I had you for 11th grade, let's see, how long ago?
76, you said.
77, yeah. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
I don't remember any of these stories. The Okinawa or the U.S. Navy stories.
Well, I couldn't really get into them like you asked me today, you know what I mean, because it'd probably be just an incident if I mentioned it.
Right, because you have to worry about covering the rest, getting the rest down before the big test.
What's that?
Well, getting ready for the regents and all that, the regents exam.
Oh, yes. You have regents?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, we had, one is always, I think a teacher is always worried that his students do their best and that they're going to accomplish successful results. You don't like to do anything. It's like planting a garden unless you have the hope that what is going to turn out is going to be great. And every teacher wants his handiwork, his students, to excel. And if they don't, it becomes very difficult for him to swallow the fact that his student is not performing the way he should. For example, in regents, I would assume that they're all going to pass. I hope.
That's the hope. That's always the hope.
Yeah.
Is it going to be the reality?
If they do what you tell them to do, they have a much better chance than if they go out on their own and think that what they're doing will be sufficient, and maybe it is not sufficient when they get the grades. Sometimes you get a big shocker when you're not as good as you thought you were. And even though you're a good student, that doesn't mean that you can't fall by the wayside unless you prepare.
So
I think the better everyone prepares, the better for you. I don't mind a student who gave 100% and didn't do so well, but I do if he gave 50, 60%, or tried to get a 55 or 65 just to make the grade, rather than to shine at 98.
There you go.
98 may not even be good enough if he is capable of 99 or 100. You can never be happy with what you're doing because you can always do a little better. And we don't have enough people doing that. It's not really keen to be one of the boys who can be dumb or a nerd, or to even watch someone else carry on not reporting. If I was a student and anyone didn't behave in class, I would talk with him or tell the teacher immediately, right in front of the class. he's annoying me, I don't like what he's doing.
There you go.
And I would enjoy that. I am of that school now. When I went to school, we looked upon those people who made good grades as accomplished. We enjoyed that. As I got older in school, I found many of them thought it was not too keen to be a good scholar. Want to be one of the boys, and that's not going to get him through life. The nerd is going to be boss in the future, not the fellow who goofed off.
All right.
I hope that you have enjoyed this interview.
It's been great.
And that you can have whatever you want.
All right. Thanks, Al.
Yeah. Did you want to...